Go. We're live once again with another edition of Houston Roundball Review presented by Talkin Sports. The trio looks a little bit different right now because Willy Gibson is doing some fatherly duties at school. So hopefully he'll join us when he can. Filling in for him right now is James Mueller, sports editor of Daily Cougar. And we just lost him again. But right now, I'm Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. And you see James Mueller joining us, and hopefully come back will be Andy Yanez from Paul Samajama, Community Impact Newspaper, etc. But James, man, it was kind of short notice, but thank you very much for filling in. How you doing, man?
Good. I'm happy to fill in and glad to talk some sports with you today. We you?
I'm doing okay. Andy's having some tech issues. We got a thunderstorm. A few thunderstorms blowing through Houston, so we may have some technical issues for a while until the thunderstorms and lightning blows by. So we'll just make it work, see how it goes. And all right, James, you're a sports editor at the Cougar. We got some talk about. I'm going to talk to you about Quentin Grimes, former Cougars. Well, once a Cougar, always a Cougar. We know that. In the NBA Summer League, Quentin, Dejan Duro, Armani Brooks out of the health and safety protocols should be playing for the Rockets a few minutes tonight versus Orlando. So just your thoughts on what you've seen so far from Quentin and Dejan Duro.
Yeah, I mean, they both had some really impressive games. I think people were expecting big things from Quentin just with the hype that built up after his performance at the Combine and in those scrimmages. And I mean, last night, I think he had 28, led the Knicks in scoring. He's been showing he can shoot, but then also just like his defense has been really impressive. I know there's a few clips that were circulating around on Twitter and stuff, but just watching him guard guys like Cade Cunningham, some of those top guys in the class, he could hold his own. And then Dejan, I mean, he's sort of the dark horse. You know, a lot of people outside of Houston didn't really know him that much and didn't really know what to expect. But he's showing that, you know, what he showed at UH, he can do a little bit of everything, right? He can score, he can assist, he's a good defender, and he's had a double-double and 2 near triple-doubles. So, I mean, I think his performance is probably the most surprising for most people just because he's come out so strong. And as an undrafted player, you know, that's what you want to see from a guy like him in the Summer League.
You know, I think folks outside of Houston, people who don't follow U of H basketball are surprised maybe a little bit by Dejan Duro's performances. But if you heard Kelvin Sampson's comments to the media about a month or so ago, Coach Sampson said to us point blank that Miami thought of Dejan Duro as having made the team.
Yeah.
Thought of Dejan. They were willing to buy a pick in the second round to get Dejan, and all signs pointing to Dejan making the team, giving him minutes in Summer League, being part of the team, being vocal, a vocal leader, all those things. So media, you and me, who are part of that call, and U of H fans who's seen Dejan throughout his career here, we're not surprised.
Yeah.
You know, so it's good to see him shine.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong about that. It's good to see him shine. But, you know, Coach Sampson knows basketball. You know, he didn't want to say too much to us because he didn't want to speak for Heat head coach Eric Spoelstra, but he did say, Dejan has made the team.
Yeah.
So, but you touched on one thing about Quentin. There are clips about him. He played great defense on Cade Cunningham. One possession and stole the ball from Cade, and other times Cade got Quentin. That's part of Summer League. It's part of how it goes. But the Knicks overall, the youngsters are playing well. They're scoring. In Tom Thibodeau, Coach Tibbs' opinion, their defense is not up to par. You know, I'm sure that's really upsetting him a great deal. But let's shift to the Rockets. They got their 4th Summer League game this evening, about 90 minutes from now. That's why we're doing this, Folks Talking Sports now, rather than our usual 7 o'clock. They're playing Orlando. No Jalen Green because of hamstring concern or rest. I mean, it's only August. Orlando's without Jalen Suggs. I think he has a thumb or wrist injury. Rockets are also going to be without probably Kyrie Thomas because of soreness. So I'm not sure what is sore for him, but something is bothering him to keep him from playing. So it's just interesting to me, and Andy's trying to come back, joining us. It's kind of curious. Everybody so far has either played 4 summer league games or will play the 4th one today. Every top 4, top 5 pick has missed time or will be sat out because of rest, injury, precaution. It's guys, they're already doing load management in summer league. Cade Cunningham out with a calf. And Mobley, a DNP. Jalen Suggs out with a wrist thumb. Jalen Green, hamstring. Guys, I mean, really, what's up with this? What are your thoughts on? I mean, I'm not saying they're not legitimately injured, but it's summer league. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, for me personally, like, I understand the Jalen Green situation a little. I've been following the Rockets the closest in the summer league, and I understand that a little more just because he did, like, you could see the injury during the game, and I understand holding him out. But I don't understand all these, did not play or, holding out for various reasons, whether they're like serious injuries or not, because summer league, the great thing about summer league is that's the time to gel with these guys. You haven't played with these guys before. You need time, especially as a rookie, to, really learn the system, get playing time in the system. This playing time, even though it's against, first, second year players, it's very valuable and plays a big part in, helping build confidence and just getting in a rhythm when the NBA season does come around.
Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, like James said, by the way, I have no idea what is going on with my connection. It has just not worked out at all. So hopefully I don't cut off in the middle of my sentence. But yeah, it's kind of a microcosm of what the NBA is today, especially with these top prospects. I mean, why risk it? That's the kind of the perspective that teams are doing. I mean, you mentioned the Rockets is a little bit more different because of Jalen Green. You actually saw the injury, and I mean, summer league is great and all, but in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you saw a couple of years ago when the Lakers won the summer league championship, and then we're terrible in the regular season. So I can see why teams are being a lot more conservative when it comes to playing their stars, especially if they're a top pick, because for these franchises, it's basically their job on the line, and if one of the top prospects gets a serious injury, then it's only going to look bad, not only on management, but on the coaching staff as well.
And I'm not, I'm not being the old man of the three. I am the oldest of the trio here. If the guys are legitimately injured, obviously don't risk further injury. Okay. But if we're talking rest, come on, you're 19 years old. This is 4 games in 5, 6, 7 days. Really, if that's what the issue is, be better. But if it's a legit injury, I know Killian Hayes got concussed, ironically, by banging into Quentin Grimes on a loose ball. The two of them clashed heads. And despite both of them having a lot of hair on their heads, it still was a legitimate injury collision. And Killian Hayes is probably going to be out with concussion for the rest of the summer league, which is in Detroit's case, 1 more game. So, but it's part of what it is. I guess it's 2021. Summer league is different now. It's being treated differently. These guys are investments. So you don't want to lose your investments too soon because of injury. I hope this is not the case long-term for Jalen Green, because he's only 19, of course. Mm-hmm. But I hope hamstring is going to become an issue. What do you think about the possibilities of that, James?
I mean, it fits in with the Houston narrative, right? Houston and hamstrings and basketball sort of go in hand. But I'm hoping, like you said, Jalen's shown that he's a special young talent. He's a guy who's capable of, leading the league in scoring once he matures and, fully develops. And so I'm hoping, this is just a one-time issue. But like we've seen, I mean, with Houston basketball history, hamstrings tend to come up a lot. So I'm just hoping that's not the case with Jalen.
What have you seen so far from watching the Rockets? You and Andy, you and James. What have y'all seen? What have you liked? Anything you didn't like? What have you seen so far?
I could take that one first. Regarding Jalen Green, I think the entire NBA Rockets fan base has been obsessed with that Jalen Green Sen Şengün connection that they've seen in the summer league. As far as Jalen Green goes, I think he put up a strong film for the 2 half games that he played for the summer league, particularly when you saw that game against Detroit, where the Rockets kind of faced some adversity at the beginning of that game, Jalen Green got off to a kind of slow start, but then as the game progressed, he not only showed his poise, but I mean that was a big time game. It was in the primetime slot on ESPN against the number 1 overall pick. I think you got to see a little bit more about kind of Jalen Green's mentality when it comes to what kind of player he is, how he attacks on the court, like what kind of mentality he brings to the court. And he has that alpha dog mentality where, I mean, he legitimately thinks that he should have gone number 1, and he was out there to prove it against Kate Cunningham. And when you go towards Şengün, who's been the other player that's impressed in the summer league, particularly the first 2 games, just in terms of the versatility that he's shown. And Kris, we kind of touched on it when he first got drafted by the Rockets. What stuck out to me was just how poised he was and the touch that he had for a big man, especially for how young he is. I think he showed that. Certainly, it's a lot of raw potential, but I mean, I think he's the most interesting prospect. I thought Jalen Green, of course, is the most important just in terms of how high he went, but Şengün might be an interesting prospect that they got, and in a trade that was honestly for 2 picks that they were kind of giveaways.
James, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Andy, and just going off his things about, the young guys showing potential. You see, like in the NBA draft, right? Most teams only have 1 first-round pick, and a lot of them are hit or miss. It's hard to hit on a pick. The Rockets had 4, and all 4 of the guys they selected have shown some flashes of brilliance. They're also have made some, young rookie mistakes, but they've shown that they, have a chance to really fit into this young system that Steven Silas is building. And so I think that's what stood out to me the most, that, it's hard enough to hit on 1 pick, but all 4 of these guys that they selected in the first round have all feel like they have a spot that they could fill and be productive. Obviously, playing in the summer league is different than going up against, NBA veterans who have been there, but we've seen a lot of positives from, just the young guys of the Rockets overall.
And to me, that's what summer league is about, is the positives. The scoring numbers, I don't really care about all that. I think many of us have been surprised at how well Alpi Şengün's defensively, he's much better than we were led to believe. He's smart. He's able to get into the right spots at the right time. The block shots are, I think, an added bonus. He knows how to play. You can tell the pro experience he got overseas has helped him be comfortable so far in summer league. Josh Christopher, we can see what the Rockets management saw in him about potential being a Drew Holiday type defensive player. So his potential is there. He's not a point guard. He was kind of thrown into the fire when Jalen Green had the mid-second half with the hamstring concern, and with no Armani Brooks and no Kyrie Thomas. So Josh, that's not his main spot. His handles aren't great, so we got to work on that. The decision making, he talked about that. He has to work on the decision making, getting into the paint, knowing when to pass, where to pass, the timing, those things. But that's what summer league is for. So I look at it a little bit differently than fans. I want to see how you play on defense. I want to see if you make the right decisions, right reads, and hold on to the ball and don't give it away. Don't have too many turnovers. As long as you do that, Rockets had 1 game, I think, with the first or second game, they only had 8 turnovers. So at playing as fast as they do, don't have 8 turnovers, that's outstanding. Mm-hmm. Contrast that to Detroit, 19 and 20 turnovers in their first 2 games. That's awful. So you see the comparison there. Hold on to the ball. The more time you hold on to the ball, you give yourself a chance to score. You can't score if you give the ball away. Any concerns? Are y'all going to watch this last game? Well, Rockets have 1 more game Tuesday to close out summer league. Anything you're looking for in tonight's game with Orlando?
Like I mentioned when we first discussed before the Rockets even started their summer league, I'm interested to see what Armani Brooks shows. It looks like he's finally going to be able to play after being out for a week or so with COVID protocols. I'm not even sure that they ever announced if it was that he had tested positive or had been a close contact or something like that.
Yeah, Jonathan Fagan reported that the Rockets never confirmed or denied or got into specifics about what it was. Mm-hmm. Armani was out because of health and safety protocols.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that's the thing that I'll be watching just in terms of I mentioned how does he look? How does his body look? Is he more physical? Is he more active on defense with being able to create turnovers? I mean, it's something I don't know. I saw a video the other day of Quentin Grimes being disruptive against Kate Cunningham, kind of being that type of pest, for lack of a better word. And obviously, his 3-point shooting is good, but that's another player that he's not necessarily a prospect, but an intriguing player that the Rockets could have. And even if he doesn't end up playing for the Rockets, a 3-and-D type of skill set is the defensive part of it is that he has to develop so he can end up getting those high-end contracts that you've seen from some of these players. I mean, look at the Danny Green contract he signed a couple of years ago. If he can perfect that, just being an average defender or slightly above average defender, and Armani Brooks could end up making a lot of money in the NBA.
James?
Yeah, I mean, going off Andy, my main thing was obviously as a UH guy and covering the team, seeing how Armani plays. But like you mentioned, Kris, earlier, I'm looking for more of those, things that don't show up in the box score. When I talked to Armani this summer, he talked about, Andy brought this up, being more physical. He wanted to put on more muscle because he said he didn't realize how physical it was in the NBA. So I'm looking for how his body's developed over the offseason. And then also on the defensive end, because he's got to be able to, be a solid defender. He doesn't have to be elite or anything, but good enough to where he can stay, because we know he can shoot. Everyone knows that, but he's got to be able to do a little more. And so I'm looking just to see how he's developed over that. And
And hopefully, he told Jonathan Fagan of the Chronicle that the week off, being out because of protocol, because of the COVID, he practiced Saturday. You could tell he was out a week. That conditioning took a hit, was out of breath. We'll see how many minutes he plays tonight versus Orlando. It may be 7 to 15. He may be on a minutes restriction, but I'm curious to see how well he does physically. He's not Quentin Grimes built. Quentin Grimes is solidly built. Quentin Grimes has more of an NBA body than Armani Brooks does. But Armani needs to do more than just shoot. He needs to add to his game. If he's called upon to run the offense more, be a better facilitator, be a better rebounder. Armani can rebound at U of H. We saw it. So we know he can do it. He needs to do that more in the NBA. He needs to give Coach Silas and the staff reasons to keep him on the floor if his shot's not falling. Mm-hmm. And if he does do that, Rockets have enough players now. Mm-hmm. Jalen Green, Scoot, Josh Christopher, Jayshawn Tate, especially youngsters. Armani, if you don't do your part, you're not going to play a lot. I'm not even talking about the old heads like Eric Gordon and John Wall, what do y'all think the Rockets should do with the two old heads in Eric Gordon and John Wall? So they just tell them, thanks, we're going to try to work out a deal for you, both of you, to send y'all to a contender because we're going to go with the youth movement and just give the guys as many minutes as possible, or keep the vets around till February to be leaders in the locker room, show the youngsters how the ropes of the NBA, and then February make a deal for both of them. What do y'all think?
Yeah, Kris, you actually took verbatim everything that I thought. And the reason I think that it's probably better for the Rockets to hang on to John Wall or Gordon at least to February for the trade deadline, it's just, when you look at teams traditionally that kind of go full tank mode, I'm looking at the Philadelphia 76ers when they just went completely trust the process mode. It's nice to have a lot of young players and see that core grow, but when you're an NBA team filled with nothing but rookies, or young guys in general, you're going to tend to struggle just to, compete, especially in the Western Conference. One thing you don't want to be is to kind of create that culture of losing. And obviously, even with John Wall or Eric Gordon, they're not necessarily going to end up being a, top 5 team in the Western Conference. But I mean, just to have that guidance and that veteran leadership, and we mentioned something that's something that Daniel Theis might end up bringing to the Rockets as well. But I feel just having those players that have been in the playoffs and have been, through a lot of NBA seasons, and to have that experience about training camp and the early parts of the season, particularly for these young guys where there's going to be stretches where they go on long losing streaks, but to have that veteran voice in their ear and not just be a lot of young guys, I think that's beneficial to them in the long run. And then with someone like Eric Gordon or John Wall, you can well, I don't know so much about John Wall, but with Eric Gordon, you could always ship him out in the trade deadline. And, I mean, it's not like you're going to lose anything if you trade him now from in February.
What do you think, James?
Yeah, I agree with Andy. Just I look at this similar to the Chris Paul and OKC type scenario. You saw what that did for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he credits Chris Paul for helping him develop his game. I don't think they necessarily have to hold on to John Wall and Eric Gordon the whole season like the Thunder did with Chris Paul. But I do think there's no risk because right now, both Wall and Gordon's trade value is kind of iffy just because of the injuries. So if they have a solid first half of the season, you could get some real value out of them by shipping them to a contender. And then you're not leaving your rookies in the dark to start the season. So they have, some guidance. And then once they, can take that and put it into their own game, then they can start becoming the leaders on the team. So yeah, that's my approach.
Do both of y'all know who Bobby Marks is?
From ESPN, their cap expert, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. In one of his Instagram updates, he mentioned this particular thing. I want y'all to get your thoughts on it. Bobby said, in his opinion, the Eastern Conference now is better than the Western Conference. Thoughts? He didn't go into specifics about it because, he went through talking about salary, signing, free agency, things like that. But let's take the top 4 teams in the East compared to the top 4 teams in the West. East, we got Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Philly, and then who for your 4th team? Miami
Or
Miami
Atlanta.
made a lot of. I would probably take Miami just with the moves they've made. They've taken a lot more heavy veteran and defensive-minded approach. I think it's going to end up helping them in the long run.
Okay, so those 4 against who's number 1 in the West? Phoenix because of getting to the finals, or the Lakers because of LeBron and AD, or Utah?
If we're talking fully healthy, I'm taking the Lakers to be the number 1 team.
Okay. So let's go Lakers, Phoenix.
Phoenix is in there with Paul returning.
Okay. Then Clippers, no, because no Kawhi.
Yeah, Kawhi's out.
Utah
should be fine. I mean, I don't think they'll make a deep run, but I think they're a top 4 team in the West.
Okay, then who's the 4th team?
I think you've got to put Denver in there in the top
Denver,
4.
Yeah.
Denver with Jamal Murray healthy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we don't know how healthy he's going to be.
That's true.
Okay, so I think that might be why. Well, one reason, I'm not going to speak for Bobby about it, but that might be one reason why he said that, because you have a bit more uncertainty in the Western teams. What about, same thing with Golden State. You don't know if Klay Thompson's going to be healthy. Where would you put them? We know it's not going to be. Where would you put Memphis? Where would you put Portland? You know it's not going to be the Rockets and OKC. You know it's not going to be them. It won't be Sacramento.
Or Minnesota.
It probably won't be New Orleans or Minnesota. Okay, so would you agree with it? Then the top 4 in the East are better than the top 4 in the West?
From that standpoint, I feel like the Eastern Conference has a lot more top-heavy teams. I think what the West has over the Eastern Conference still to right now is just how more spread out it is in terms of maybe the West doesn't necessarily have a top juggernaut. It could be the Lakers depending on their health situation, but they're still a wait-and-see type of team. But, get outside of the top 4, you have teams like Dallas, Portland, you mentioned. San Antonio in the mix. They're not necessarily the best in terms of talent, but they always seem to be in that play-in mix. Golden State's going to be another question mark just in terms of if Klay Thompson finally able to step on the court and play, and even then they've been able to make some moves as well. Just when you look at from 4 to 11 to 12 in the West, they're all intriguing teams where you're not necessarily sure on whether they end up going. It'll probably be another battle for that play-in. And when you look at the East, once you get past the top 4, you probably have Atlanta that had that. I wouldn't call it a Cinderella season, but certainly no one expected them to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And you have New York, who
okay, the more you think about it, the East is you got Atlanta, the Knicks, Indiana,
Chicago got better.
Indiana.
So we named 8 teams right there that on paper in the East look improved or as good as they were this past season. Now, the West, I'm agreeing with you to a point, Andy, but we going 8 for 8. I'm not sure, because clearly the previous, my gosh, 15, 20 years, it seems like that was no question. Yeah, the West was the better conference, no doubt. But I think that the tide has turned a bit, and there are more, especially East 1 through 8 is better than it has been in a while. And goodness knows they still got some sorry teams like Orlando and Detroit, teams on the come up. Toronto, what are they going to do? You know, so East, West, it might be more balanced than people really have thought about. All right, fellas, somebody who's a little bit younger than y'all made some local news Friday by deciding to first not come back to high school for a senior year, but then go skip college as well, his freshman year of college, talking about Bryce Griggs from Fort Bend Hightower High School, signing a 2-year deal with Overtime Elite. 2 years, $1.2 million. So Bryce, and also I'm going to toot our horn, Bryce as a sophomore and a junior was a top 10 finalist for the Guy V. Lewis Award, which goes to the top boys high school player in the greater Houston area. And this past season, his junior year, he was edged by, my goodness, 1 or 2 points by Ramon Walker for the winning of the award this year. But he averaged 23 points a game, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, and about 2 steals a game while at Hightower. OTE sent out a press release. And just listen, here's some comments from first the executive VP of OT Elite and then head coach Kevin Ollie. Remember him? Kevin Ollie. First up, quote, Bryce Griggs is a player that has been recognized as one of the nation's most promising playmaking guards, and we are thrilled to welcome him to the OTE family. That's Brandon Williams, Executive Vice President and Head of Basketball Operations. He continues, Bryce has had one of the best coaches and mentors in John Lucas and has been attracted to the combination, now this is just fluff, has been attracted to the combination of an NBA caliber coaching staff, sports science, performance and nutrition focuses that will play a crucial role in his development into an NBA player. Kevin Ollie says, quote, as a former point guard, I can't be more excited to start working with Bryce and pass on what I've learned as a player and coach. Bryce has elite talent, which you can see when he has the ball in his hands, but we're also going to turn him into an elite leader on and off the floor. That's the promise I'm making to him, end quote. Thoughts on Bryce Griggs going to Overtime Elite? He's the 15th player so far, and their goal is to sign 15 more to have a total of 30 in the program from the ages of 16 to 18. Good or bad? You good with it? James, you first.
I mean, one thing I think is it's just going to be more common just because even with the NIL, you can make money, but it depends on the school you go to and that. But with this, they're making money when they would be in high school, right? And signing big deals, and who knows how much he would make. But most of these guys that are going would, if they did go to college, they'd only play a freshman year. So I think, balancing the financials to this, foregoing your senior year and signing for 2 years, I think it's going to become a more common route. I don't know if it's necessarily the best route because it's relatively new. So there's not a lot of, we don't have a lot to look at right now, but I do think we'll see this a lot more. And I mean, Bryce is a great example. We'll just see how he turns out, and just if that development that he can get with Overtime Elite is this like similar or this better, or how it compares, to being in a college program for a year or two.
Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, we were talking about this in the Part-Time Pajama group chat that we have, just in terms of how, honestly, you look at the contract that he got, he's getting $1.2 million. Like, even with the NIL, Unless if you're talking football, I mean, the NCAA or any sponsors probably can't compete with that type of money, especially for as many prospects that they're trying to sign. That's from an interesting standpoint to see what the NCAA can do to not kind of lose out on a lot of those top prospects. Obviously, one of the things that they have going in favor is, with the March Madness tournament, that type of allure that's not going to be matched by any other, regardless of it's the G League or the OT League or any other league out there. It will match that type of extravaganza event that it is. But, when you look at this past season, Jalen Green went number 2 overall. He didn't play in college. He played for the G League team. If you see a lot of more of these prospects coming out of whatever league it is, not going to college and being a top 5, top 10 pick in the NBA, I think that's going to transition. You're going to start seeing a lot more players, especially these top high-end prospects, the 5-star recruits coming out of college that will garner that. I mean, $1.2 million, I don't care who you are, you're not going to turn that down. Especially if you're 18, 17, however young these kids are. I mean, I think we're starting to see the early stages of a shift, especially because I'm not entirely sure what the NCAA can do to compete against those type of contracts other than the allure of, like I mentioned, their events.
And let me mention this about it's part of their press release and their about statement. Every OTE player will earn a 6-figure salary with a guaranteed minimum of $100,000 per year, plus bonuses and shares of equity in overtime. Overtime, wow. Do you guys use overtime? It's big on Twitch and other social media platforms. And I want to say they profess to have up to 50 million users, subscribers, whatever. Mm-hmm. In addition to the players will also participate in revenue from use of their name, image, and likeness, including through sales of custom jerseys, trading cards, video games, and NFTs. Youngsters, are y'all hip on NFTs? I'm an old head. So
and I need to. I need to learn about it because I don't know too much about it. But I mean, just look at everything you just described. And look at what the NCAA offers. There's no competition, Kris. Like, what can the NCAA do to compete against that?
Okay. Well, clearly it's not for everybody. But what if there are, local businesses who sign players to contract to NIL deals to go to college to promote their business I doubt it's going to be 6 figures annually, but maybe it is. Some programs are going to do that. Somebody's going to go into their pocket and pay a big time prospect to come to their school for above the table to do something along those lines. But, over time, OTE is only going to sign 30 players. That's their goal, 30 players. Well, NCAA is way more than 30 players. So and honestly, the backing that OTE has, they've got huge support financially. I still wonder where the money is going to come from. I want to see it. I want to see. So I'm not going to go into bank accounts, that kind of stuff. I want to make sure these kids get paid. I want to make sure that the promises OTE has made these youngsters, they stick to their word. Because I don't want Bryce Griggs to come January and say they didn't keep the promise to me, and now I'm stuck. Something like that. Where are they going to play the games? Are they going to be shown on Twitch? Are they going to be shown? What platform are they going to use? What arenas are they going to use? Are they going to have financial advisors for these young men? And if they have 2 teams of 15, what about playing time? Yeah. If I'm an elite player, and because Bryce OTE signed a point guard from South Carolina Wednesday, 2 days prior to Bryce Griggs. Great talent. Are they going to play side by side? Are they going to, split minutes? these youngsters are competitive. Coach, how come you playing him more than me? How's that going to work? So this experiment, and that's what it is. I'm kind of curious to see how it all works out, plays out, because I want to know where the game's going to be. I like to see some of them if they don't conflict with college, U of H games, NBA games, Rockets, whatever. How's it going to work? I would say NBA, are they going to be on ESPN? Are they going to be on ESPNU? What? Thoughts on that, James? Money sounds great, but what if?
Yeah, you hit on a big point when listening to, I didn't know exactly everything they were offering, but when you hit on, went over that playing time, which you mentioned was the biggest thing that came into my mind, because all these guys are going to be highly, sought after, talented guys. But there could be a guy, that doesn't get much playing time. He rides the bench where he could be playing 30 minutes a game for some college that's my biggest thing. How are they going to split up these minutes? Because you've got all these guys, but obviously they're playing to win. You can't give everyone equal amount of playing time, things like that. So I think that's the most interesting thing to me when looking at this. And then also they have to have some sort of plan, like you were talking about with financials, because there's a lot of stuff to work out when you're promising these athletes so much money.
And even if they go to 3 teams of 10, okay, you only play 5 at a time. What about those 5 on the bench?
Yeah.
What if their friends, parents get in there? Hey, man, you could have gone back to high school, gone to Montverde Academy or something and started. Why are you doing this? That kind of talk. So Kevin Ollie is head coach, but he can't coach all 3 teams if there are 3 teams, or he can't coach 2 teams. And how's it going to work? Who's going to play? Are they going to play other high school schools, public schools, private schools, academies? There's a lot of stuff that I hope Bryce and his parents and his advisors, guardians asked these questions and got good answers to the questions. And hopefully this doesn't bite him and the other players in the behind and ruin their futures. Now, Joseph Tipton of Tipton Edits did get a quote from Bryce saying that he still plans to go to U of H to get his degree. Didn't say when that would happen, but the quote from Bryce is, "I always want to show Houston love. It's my hometown. The coach told me," I love that, the coach, not Kelvin Sampson, Coach Sampson, the coach told me that even if I don't go there, that they're always going to still be there for me, end quote. Okay. Do we believe that? Is that a good thing that he's still contemplating going to get his degree at some point? Or what? Because part of OTE is an education component as well. So he's not going to get his college degree in the next 2 years. So what do y'all think?
I mean, education, I'm big on that. I think it's important because, these guys aren't going to be playing basketball forever. So getting a college degree is great. And I mean, I know it sounds great, like what you said, but the real question, like you mentioned, is, is this actually going to happen, or is he going to, get consumed with this and, maybe he has a really good first year and then, is solely on basketball, decides to, forgo any sort of college experience or education or anything like that. But I do think that is something that's interesting, not just for Bryce, but for a bunch of these guys with how they manage education when they're playing for some of these teams and signing big contracts.
Andy?
Yeah, it'll, the more I think about it, it'll certainly make an education, any aspect of that, while he's still, I guess, professional, full-time professional with OTE. I mean, usually for student athletes who play, for any sport in the university, they work around whatever class schedule they have, whatever sport they have. So regardless of practice and stuff like that, since he's playing with the OTE league, he won't have that luxury of being able to have the school support in terms of being able to rework your schedule around that. That might be something that'll make things much harder for him. And just the more I think about it, I think that's what's going to be the success that these players have is going to end up playing a big factor in it. Because if besides all this, you see more and more players from the non-college route seeing success, and whether it's a high draft pick in the NBA, then you'll kind of see the trend stay and you see more players go that route. But if you see players like you mentioned, if it all falls apart or it doesn't work out, whether it's with this league or any other league, then you'll kind of see the trend kind of wither out. And I think it's interesting. I guess the best thing the NCAA can do now is just wait and see and hope that it doesn't end up being as green as it's being sold, as perfect as it's being sold. But there's certainly a lot of obstacles that could come in the way, and it's interesting to say that he still end up going to U of H for education. I think I told you this, Kris. I don't know. It feels like it might be kind of awkward if you end up running into one of the current players or the coaching staff. But I mean,
well, we'd have to find out more details about it. He could just take online courses, something like that. It's a great story. I mean, although he did a little bit differently. Anthony Goldwire went back to U of H, former player at U of H, pro NBA and pro player, went back to U of H and got his degree, and now is on the staff, a coaching staff at U of H. But Goldie he was on campus. He went back to school. So, he didn't just go the online courses route to do that. Andy, we're going to talk some Rockets in just a second, but you brought up the NCAA. The Athletics reported a few days ago about an alliance being formed between the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 to basically, my interpretation of it, have a voting block to go against the SEC. No, Big 12 is not part of this alliance, which I think should tell those 8 schools something right there. But a voting block of the Big Ten, ACC, and the Pac-12 to go against the SEC. Thoughts on that? What does that mean about big-time college? I mean, it's football, really. College football is driving this bus. What are your thoughts on that?
It makes it seem like the SEC, it could be its own corporation. They could branch off and start their own league separate. I think it's interesting from 2 aspects when you mentioned, it's kind of like every other college is not an SEC trying to figure out, or every other Power 5 conference, besides the Big 12, trying to figure out a way to stay relevant and not falling apart or seeing a super conference. That's been rumored that could potentially happen. And then obviously the second thing is that they're not including the Big 12 in this, which makes it seem like once UT and OU leave, I'm not so sure if they'll be able to keep their A5 status, or if they do, they certainly will not be seen in the same limelight as any of the other conferences. But I think those are 2 takeaways. The SEC seems to be in a league of its own, and the Big 12 seems to be losing that P5 status.
James, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way with, UT and OU and the SEC news. It's the only way you can compete, really, because, the Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12, they all have solid schools, especially in football, but none of them are going to come close to what the SEC, brings from top to bottom, unless they do emerge. And the only thing that sort of struck me when I heard this news was just that it was 3 conferences. I expected it to be like the ACC and the Big Ten. I didn't expect 3 of them to get involved. It doesn't surprise me that the Big 12 wasn't involved, just because, like we talked about, UT and OU are the big money makers there. Once they're gone, there's some appeal, but a lot of the appeal is lost. So, I mean, it will be interesting to see how it all plays out, but it's the route they're going to have to go in terms of keeping up with the SEC.
And one note, also happened Friday. Friday was a busy day. Friday the 13th was a busy day. The Rockets signed forward Matthew Hurt to a 2-way contract. Hurt played at Duke. Great shooter. He's a 3-point shooter. That's what he does. He's a 3-point shooter. But a 2-way contract per NBA rules, a player under a 2-way deal will be allowed to be on the NBA team's active list for no more than 50 games during the regular season, with no limit on practices. That's a little bit different than previous 2 years ago. No limit on practices, workouts, or other activities with the NBA team. So he can be on the active roster no more than 50 games, and then other time he'll be on the G League team with the Vipers. So Matthew Hurt, 3-point shooter. I think it makes sense. When the Rockets signed him, announced it signed him after the draft. He went undrafted. I thought that was inevitable. Get him a two-way contract. Makes sense for him. I think he's a long-term project for the Rockets. Rockets development program is one of the tops in the NBA. Gentlemen, we're going to shift gears and go college football. So I'm going to lean on the two of y'all to carry the freight on this college football discussion for the next few minutes. But I want to open with, we're going to have 3 clips. The first clip is going to be from Mike Bloomgren, the Rice Owls head football coach. The Owls had their first scrimmage Saturday afternoon. Just some opening comments from him about how it went, get his thoughts on that. And the next 2 clips will be from football coach Dana Holgorsen. First about Clayton Tune and how Clayton's looked so far in practice. And the next one, Coach Holgorsen said the team has not taken a step back thus far in practice. So I really want to get your comments on that, because I was like, Okay, but first up, Rice Owls head football coach Mike Bloomgren.
Scrimmage out here, great weather for it in Houston today. Got 112 plays of work in, and I'm really excited about the tempo at which we played. It was a day that was certainly the defense had the upper hand. The 12th ranked scoring defense, returning 10 players on defense. They probably should, but it showed today. It was good to see the offense dig their way out a couple times, but also good to see the defense bow their neck and keep them out of the end zone, holding the field goals even after a few explosive plays. So all in all, pretty happy with the effort. Can't wait to watch the film and evaluate it. As we always know with these scrimmages, depth charts will move. Players will go up and down, and it will provide more opportunities as we go to the next phase of our training camp.
Just coaching them, just by coaching them. I said this, if he doesn't improve, that's on me, because, our job's to push him and to coach him and to teach him and to, show him what's expected. I could not be happier with where Clayton's at this point. He's been dead on for, 8 straight practices. This will be practice number 9. He's been great. He's been consistent. He's been a leader. He's been accurate. The timing with a lot of the guys has really improved. We've never completed more deep balls than we have up until this point. So I'm happy with where he's at, and I'm happy with where the timing of the offense is. We've got a ton we got to work on. He's got a ton he's got to work on, but up until this point, what we've tried to get accomplished, we're on track. Seeing us take a step back. Emotions have been high a few periods, which has been good. We've had to calm them down a little bit, which has been good. But they've done everything we've asked them to do. We've had guys have been here on time in the morning. They're maintaining hydration. They're eating the appropriate way. They're sleeping the appropriate way. They come in each and every day ready to go. And I think that's why our health has been good, why our attitudes have been good, which is which leads to good team morale and good team bonding, and all that stuff's been spot on. So. I thought we were a little bit sluggish this morning, which is okay as long as we work through it. Once we get out there, then we'll get a little bit of a bigger break heading into tomorrow night, to where we're gonna, for the first time, put the ball down and see if we can drive it or see if we can stop us.
Guys, what are your thoughts on that? On the reason I played the Coach Bloomgren clip is because the Cougs and Owls square off September 11th at Rice Stadium. Rice has the 12th ranked scoring defense in the country last year. I didn't know that. But tie that in with Coach Holgorsen saying that Clayton Tune has really done a great job with the receivers on deep balls. So I think U of H going deep could be an advantage going against Rice's defense. So that's what are your thoughts on what you heard?
I mean, I can start just, from what I've seen at practices and just talking to coaches and athletes. I do think you can really sense the new sort of energy they're talking about, and sort of how Dana Holgorsen talked about how they haven't really taken a step back. I know several players mentioned, including Clayton Tune, in previous years, they'd find, a lull, they'd hit a dead spot around day 4 or 5 of training camp, but they rarely haven't seen that this year. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background.
No problem, man. That's all right.
But so, and you can sense that excitement just with talking to players and just the way they've approached practice so far. Obviously, I'm not in that locker room and don't have, access to everything, but I do think they will. I do buy what they're selling right now. I don't think, you're going to see a top 10 team or anything, but I do think there's, a rejuvenation in this program because they've talked about how they're tired of losing and just not being really relevant in the eyes of many people in Houston.
Andy?
Yeah, like James said, it hasn't just been Dana Holgorsen. Really, it's kind of a unified message that has come across that football program for the first week and a half, 2 weeks that they've been back in training camp and speaking with reporters. I know Clayton Tune mentioned it. Derek Parrish, who is one of the defensive linemen that they're really high on, has mentioned the same thing, where they haven't had any of that. Would I call it a fatigue wall or emotional wall? Once you get into the this point of the training camp where it kind of gets lackadaisical and kind of, you're human. You get when it's still far away.
It's part of the blahs. Yeah. Practice routine. It gets monotonous after a while. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the perfect word. It is still about just under 3 weeks for that first game against Texas Tech. But yeah, I feel like that unified message is interesting coming from not only Dana Holgorsen or players on offense, but also on defense. Even the defensive coordinator, Doug Belk, had a similar message from what he's seen. And another thing that they've preached is competition at every position. Minus except quarterback. Clayton Tune's kind of has that in the bag for this season. But every other position, they've been talking about how that's been one of the main focuses they've tried to get, not to guarantee any spot. Obviously, they have their seniors and their high-end veterans that are coming in. But outside of that, everything's wide open. And when you look at the schedule that we've gone over a few times before, it should be a season where they finally break through and, at least hit the 8-win mark, possibly go higher. But, when we're talking about Clayton Tune specifically that Dana Holgorsen mentioned, he's seemed like the offense has been much more zoned in and locked in terms of, like you mentioned the deep ball quote, from what I got to see today in practice that they had early on Sunday morning. I take it with a grain of salt because it was a short, brief moment that they allowed reporters to see, but they did. They kind of simulated a game environment where they pitched in the fake audio crowd noise. They had, I believe, they might have, like, they had four downs to move the offense, and when Clayton Tune was in charge, like, you could tell a certain difference. They were able to move the ball relatively easy. There weren't any mistakes in terms of interceptions or anything like that. And kind of the flow, the command, that's the right word, that Clayton Tune had in those two drives that we were able to see. You can certainly see a difference, and you can certainly tell from when the backups are on and Clayton Tune is on that the offense is much more smooth, much more crisp, and much more sure of what they need to do.
James?
Yeah, sort of adding on to what Andy was talking about, Clayton, I think it's really important. And from what I've seen as well, I've seen, an increase in accuracy and things like that. But it's really important for him this year because of the receiving core. They've lost a lot of key guys. So he needs to be that guy that steps up and can put the ball, having to make his receivers, make incredible plays, because there's some young guys. There's guys who haven't been in the system a lot. But I think a big thing or a big reason we're seeing some, increased confidence and consistency, at least in the spring, what the team's seeing from Clayton is because of the offensive line. Dana Holgorsen said he thinks Clayton's had like 22 different combinations of offensive line since he's been at UH, and any football fan knows that's not good. You need consistency up there, and especially last year with COVID and injuries. But this year they have a solid core. They brought in a center named Cody Russi, who's just made a huge impact on the team from what they've talked about, just the leadership and just Division I playing experience. So I think just having that solid group up front, and then they have depth that they feel comfortable in. At least the coaching staff has said that if a guy goes down, but I think that increased just that consistency along the offensive line will play a big role in helping Tune, be more comfortable and, really be able to sit back there and take his time and make the throws he needs to make.
And in y'all's opinion, is there a position on the team that depth is not as strong? I'll put it like that.
I can speak. I mean, according to Dana Holgorsen the other day, he talked about how there was still some concern at wide receiver, sort of like I mentioned. They lost Marques Stevenson, who was, their big dog the past few years. They had another guy, 5th or 6th year senior, Cole McGowan. He went down and he's out for the year. But and although, he hasn't, his stats won't pop off the pages, he's a veteran leader has reliable hands and Dana Holgerson's talked about how receiver depth can be a little concerning. That's the one position I've seen so far. I don't know if Andy's seen anything different or heard anything different, but
No, I agree that's really the only position that Dana Holgerson has mentioned in terms of, an area of concern. And when you look at up and down the depth chart, I mean, they lost a lot of their big playmakers, and honestly, it kind of fills it opens up a hole much rather for them to have a number one receiver. When you think about it, they don't necessarily have one that, when you mentioned a go-to receiver that stands out right away. And last year it was Marques Stevenson. He went over to the Buffalo Bills in the NFL draft. I think one key player that, could probably fill in that role, even though he's still young, so it might be a bit of a stretch. But James, I want to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think about Tank Nathaniel Dell kind of filling that role as the top receiver for this group?
Yeah, so I got to speak to him, I think Wednesday. He definitely has that. He comes with that swagger, that sense of confidence. And he's got speed and he's got good hands. The thing is just, the littler things that he tried to work on over the offseason, getting off his routes cleaner, being able to hand fight the defensive back effectively. Those are some things that I think will make or break for him. But I think he has the opportunity to emerge as a guy. He showed some solid play last year when he did get in, but he is still young, like you said. But he does have what you look for in a receiver. It's just, will those little technique things that he talked about working on hard over the offseason, will those really show off? And if those do show off, I think he can establish himself as, Tune's go-to guy this year.
So what y'all seen and heard, do y'all feel confident in the 8 wins we predicted minimum for the team this year?
I do. I mean, I do, just because of the schedule. Like I said, I think this team will be improved from last year. But I don't think they're going to be top 10, whatever. I don't even know if they'll break in the top 25. But because of the schedule, they have the talent to win 8 games.
Okay, I'll turn it around. From what y'all seen and heard, have you changed your tune and think they will beat Texas Tech in the opener?
I could see that, just in terms of their defense last season, but prior to getting hit with injuries and the COVID pause that they had in November that affected the entire linebackers core. I mean, their defense had a much improvement in 2020, and I feel like that's only going to carry over this season, especially with the new additions that they've made across different positions. But and now Texas Tech coming off they're not necessarily world beaters like they were a couple of seasons ago. So I could totally see them pulling up the upset, if you call it. Now, it's funny when you asked if I'm confident of them being able to get that 8-win mark. The only reason I kind of pause at it and not be 100% on board is I've kind of heard this before last season. Okay, there's 2 differences, because last season there was kind of a similar message with Dana Holgerson, how this year was different. Obviously, much different circumstances just in terms of COVID and all that stuff. I think the key difference between what was kind of preached last year and this year is just confidence might be the wrong word to do it, but it certainly seems like it's more, they're projecting much more of a strong, unified message, not just in terms of Dana Holgerson saying, yeah, this is our second year under this offense. We're going to be much better. We should be much smoother. It's much more of the actual players kind of not only commenting it themselves, but giving specific examples of why they believe that they're in a much better spot than they were last season. But like I said, I've heard it was kind of similar last year, not quite, but if I had to bet, I would say they get over, or at least the 8-win mark.
All right, we're going to close it out in this last 30 minutes, roughly 30 minutes before Rockets Orlando Summer League game. Willy Gibson is joining us. He finished off his duties. So thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any insight on Evan Mobley, sir?
Yeah, he the plan, and I'm still searching to find out why, but the plan was always for him to only play 3 games in Vegas. I don't know if it was due to his limited time at USC. I'm not quite sure as to why, but the plan was always for him to play 3 games in Vegas and to shut it down. So no injury, no nothing. He's on ice until training camp.
Okay, well, we touched on that the first half hour of today's show about the top picks seemingly being shut down and not playing all 4 games of Summer League, with or without legitimate injury, because Jalen Green legitimately has a hamstring issue. Cade Cunningham, calf injury. He didn't play Saturday against the Lakers. I think it was Lakers. And the weird thing, I'm not sure why the NBA scheduled back-to-back games in Summer League. I'm not sure if that is a change because of the Wizards' protocol issues and have the scramble schedule or what, but why have back-to-back games in Summer League? But Evan Mobley shut it down. Jalen Green shutting it down. Cade Cunningham probably shutting it down. Jalen Suggs, is it a thumb or wrist? He's done. So what we were touching on, I was like, load management in Summer League? Is that where we are now in today's NBA? What do you think about that?
It appears to be. Maybe they've seen enough in the 3 games that they played, and they're like, listen, we don't want to take a chance. And that 4th game of an injury, maybe, Jalen or Suggs, legitimate thumb injury, Jalen Green with the hamstring, maybe that was enough for others to say, hey, you know what? It's not worth it. Let's get him ready for the end of September and training camp. So, but it is interesting, as you said. Maybe the condensed schedule, compressed schedule, due to the schedule from COVID, maybe had a bit to play into it. I don't know, but it seems to be among the top 5 picks a trend.
And like I said, I'm not the old man get on my lawn thing, get off my lawn. But if you're legitimately hurt, okay. But if you're not, rest. I mean, you said the plan was for Evan to play just 3 games and shut it down.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. We're still trying to figure that out. Like, what was the rationale behind that? Kobe Altman has time in it. Dan Gilbert was in Vegas over the weekend, Cavs chairman. So he's not going to say anything. He's going to defer everything to Kobe Altman and the basketball staff. But yeah, for whatever reason, the word is that going into the summer league, the plan was for Evan Mobley to play 3 games, and that's it. So be interested to find out the true reason why.
Yeah, one of the viewers chimed in, Kings of Investment chimed in on YouTube in our comments, probably because of lack of conditioning due to COVID. Well, I could argue, flip it around, you could get improve your conditioning by playing. So it's August. Practice training camp begins September. Maybe 2 weeks so. And then we got preseason games. So it was not always like this, youngsters, Andy and James. Honestly, fellas, I'm not even going to lie. I'm not going to even pretend like I cared about Summer League a whole lot the last 15 years because I didn't. In Summer League, I treated it for what it was. The few times here in Houston when we had Summer League pro-ams, I went to some of those. Whatever. Had a good time, watched it, whatever kind of thing. But I do wonder what ESPN thinks about the load management for the stars, for the guys that they marketed, hyping up these top players, and they're not playing. I wonder what ESPN thinks about that. What do you think, Andy?
Well, from an ESPN standpoint, they absolutely hate it because they're losing ratings. I mentioned last week when it was Cade Cunningham versus Jalen Green. Now, they love that primetime spot. Both stars played. Both stars showed out. Both stars had a chance where they were kind of going at each other. go at it a week later, and well, there's not much stars left. So I'd be curious if ESPN. But then you look at it that standpoint. I mean, they could complain to the NBA, but I mean, what much more can the NBA do to force these players to play? Because when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's the management of teams and the individual coaches staff that makes those decisions, and ultimately they're not going to do anything that they feel might be put their, top players, their top prospects at risk for summer league. Like I mentioned, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. Whoever wins the summer league championship isn't going to have a bonus or anything once the regular season starts. So there's not much that can change, but ESPN absolutely hates it.
What do you think, James?
Yeah, exactly what Andy said. I mean, these summer league games, I mean, they don't mean anything in terms of wins or losses. They're simply, to get people playing time, to get film on guys, to see how they fit in and things like that. So obviously people aren't like as invested in the summer league as just a typical fan, because, it's not like win or lose, it's going to affect you. But you get a lot more invested if you can see, your top draft pick, a Cade Cunningham, a Jalen Green, a guy play. So obviously ESPN's not going to like it, because their viewership will go way down without, these marquee young rising stars on the court.
Willie, what have you seen from the Cavs so far in summer league that you liked, didn't like, heck, don't care? What have you seen?
Yeah.
Did we lose Will?
He was just about to give us some pearls of wisdom to it.
I guess we could use that to segue into Quentin. I don't know if you guys talk about Quentin or Dejan whenever I was out.
Yeah, we did what you were trying to hop on in, but yeah, share your thoughts on Quentin and Dejan. Well, let's see if Will can come back in and talk about the Cavs. All right, try to get your Cavs
Did
comment
that answer
in,
your
sir.
Question?
Was that the sign for? Was that
no
indicator right there?
No. Yeah. Somebody again. I think I mentioned him last week. Lamar Stephens from Penn State, rookie free agent. They signed late in the season last year. Showed a lot of some flashes that he potentially could do some things. So for a guy like him to get continued reps is good. Isaac Okoro did some things. His first summer league, second year player, but due to COVID last year, summer league was canceled. So he was able to do some things. The 3 games that Evan Mobley did play, he showed flashes. He's, everyone thought he was going to be a banger, but he's shown to be more of a perimeter guy at 7 feet, and which kind of meshes well with Jared Allen come regular season. So there are flashes. There's a guard. His name escapes me right now. He probably won't make training camp roster. But he potentially has done himself well for summer league to maybe get a look from another team, and that's really what it's about. Summer league, as you say, Chris. Sometimes we pay attention. Most times we don't, because it's really outside of the top 10 to 15 players, and maybe that one diamond in the rough, if you will. It's really not a lot of interest. A lot of things that are going to interest you, going forward in the summer. So, but those are pretty much the things that I saw from Cleveland from a Cavs perspective so far in summer league.
Yeah, you got to be a diehard fan to keep up a summer league and follow your team and follow the youngsters and live or die with how the team's looking in summer league. That's not me. It's just not. When the Rockets game tonight against Orlando is done, I'll be part of the media availability session post game with the Coach Weaver, and probably Josh Christopher and then somebody else. But other than that, I'm just waiting for practice to start, September. So, and then get close to the games, the real games that count. Whatever. Summer league games is like NFL exhibition games. Whatever. Whatever. So, but lost him again. Maybe we'll time out again. All right, Andy, give your take on Quentin Grimes and Dejan Jarreau for their respective teams, Knicks and Heat?
Yeah, we were just talking about how for the top prospect stars, summer league isn't necessarily such a big deal, but for players on the honestly even mid draft lottery towards everyone else, this is a very intriguing and honestly valuable experience for them to kind of get a taste of what the NBA game is like at not necessarily as high of a level once October comes and the season starts. When you talk about Dejan Jarreau and Quentin Grimes, you've seen that how, from each game they've progressed. They've kind of done better from as the games go on. And, I'll talk about Quentin first. Obviously, he's coming off his best game in the summer league yesterday, where I believe he had like 28 points and hit a few threes. How many was it? Was it like 6 or so threes? I think what you've seen with Quentin and Dejan to a bigger extent, but it's just that progression of getting his feet wet and kind of playing in a different system, especially for Quentin. It's a much different role that he saw from what he did here at U of H. He had to, especially with the Knicks summer league team, they have a couple of players that played big minutes for them, and Emmanuel quickly was, one of the top. He was a key player for the Knicks rotation in the playoffs, and now having to kind of take a step back from the role that he played with U of H, where he was the go-to scorer. I think that's a bit of an adjustment for Quentin, and it's something that it pays off to have been able to have that experience in the summer league. When you look at Dejan Jarreau, he's been impressive. What's been impressive to me is how consistent he's been able to play throughout these summer league games. He had a double-double earlier in the week, and he followed up with almost having another triple-double with just filling out the stat sheet. And it's something that Calvin Sampson said that he saw with Dejan Jarreau. He said that the Miami Heat were high on Dejan, that they wanted to take a second-round pick on him, buy a second-round pick just to take Dejan. And just from the performance he's been able to string together, I'm not entirely sure if the contract they signed Dejan was just a summer league deal, if they plan on signing him to a two-way contract in the near future. But I think he's only strengthened his case for being able to be a part of the Miami Heat organization. And even to I know we haven't talked about him more, but Nate Hinton, who played for U of H 2 years ago, he got off to a slow start in his summer league. I think he had a game where he had like 6 turnovers that first game. He really struggled, and he's certainly progressed as the games have gone on. I think today he had another good performance. He might have put up 19 points, and with Nate, he's always going to end up filling the stat sheet with rebounds and stuff like that. So you've kind of seen the other spectrum of the NBA Summer League with these 3 players where they're getting playing time from the case of Nate Hinton, who kind of didn't really saw much at the NBA level, didn't see much at all. And then, the G League was pretty limited. And then with Quentin and Dejan, you've seen that improvement. They've kind of been able to adjust to the NBA game at a much slower, much lesser level and not get thrown into the complete fire once the NBA season does roll on.
I think many of the guys who were rookies last season will spend more time in the G League this season because hopefully, code willing, we'll have a G League season that will last more than a month. So Nate will probably spend more time in G League to develop because he barely played. He barely saw any time with the Mavs last season. He was on the bench, supported the team, his role, but a chance to develop on the court, strengthen his skills. I think it'll be the same for all the guys this year, rookies this season. Spend time in the G League. Dejan Jarreau, I think, will be a balance. I have not heard if he signed a 2-way deal with the Heat or any contract status with him, if 2-way, or maybe start out with 2-way and then change it to a regular contract later on. But he'll probably spend some time in the G League as well for time to play, because many of the youngsters won't play. Many of the rookies will not play a lot of minutes this season. And that's one thing I asked Will Weaver about, is if the coaches, Rockets, have already had discussions about G League, who will be in the G League and how much time will spend down there this season. He said they had not discussed that yet. But at some point, probably Usman Garuba, at minimum of the 4, will be in the G League.
Christopher, too.
To develop Josh Christopher because of the rotation, the guard minutes. Especially if they keep John Wall and Eric Gordon until February. There won't be time for Josh Christopher to play. If you got Wall, Gordon, KPJ, Jalen Green, Armani Brooks, David Nwaba, Rockets got a lot of 1, 2s, and 3s that are interchangeable. So I think you'll see some Josh Christopher down in the G League. Nothing wrong with that, because you get a chance to play. You get a chance to compete for a few games in a week, and that's much better than just sitting on the bench, up here. And you're still going to get paid regardless, but you get a chance to compete, learn the system, fine-tune some things, strengthen some weaknesses. So I think that's a possibility for all of them, except Jalen Green. He, barring injury, he's going to be with the big boys the whole year. So, but at some point, we got a few more minutes before we close it out here. Tamer Knight is going to try to join us. She was going to attend the memorial service for Cameron Burrell. Andy James, I don't know if you had a chance to interview Cam during his time at U of H, but just your thoughts on his tragic passing. And his dad, Leroy Burrell, did mention officially that Cam did take his own life. So, tragedy, 26 years old, he took his life. But the memorial service, I think, is from 6 to 8 today? 8 p.m. I think that's right?
They had a visual
visitation.
Visitation. I'm sorry.
And then tomorrow's the celebration.
The actual
of
service.
Celebration of life.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, I guess I can start. I did not get a chance to talk to Cameron. He graduated a year before I came to UH, but I followed him a little bit, and he really was a trailblazer for that program, and did a lot of incredible things. Was an NCAA champion in several events, and obviously when I heard the news, it's extremely tragic. The one positive I think I can take out of this is just the way the Burrell family has handled it, and especially with the discussion of mental health and things. Like Leroy Burrell in the statements he issued was like, if you're having trouble with this, you need to seek help. We don't want something like this to happen to your loved one. So I think even though it's obviously a tragic accident and my heart breaks for the family, I think it has shed light on some important things that we've seen all throughout different sports regarding mental health and just difficulties with that.
Andy?
Yeah, similar to James, I was unfortunately unable to cover him, even though we did have 1 year together at U of H. I guess where our time kind of elapsed. I didn't join the Cougar until late 2019, but like James said, it's just such a sad tragedy just as the details came out, and also him leaving behind a family. But like James said, the one positive that, and I hate to say that just in terms of the circumstance, but kind of the way people have kind of brought attention to mental health, and how you honestly never know what anyone could be going through. Like, they could seem fine one day and you figure out that it wasn't. And it's sad that it takes something like this to bring awareness to such a issue that's much more common. And we've seen even in the NBA, we had a couple of players like Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan talk about it. It's sad, and even Dana Holgorsen today said how he's seen the University of Houston athletics program, across the different teams already around Leroy Burrell. I think that's something, and it's so sad it has to come in under these circumstances, but you kind of see not just the university in general, but just a lot of people kind of react and support Cameron after the news came out. I mean, I've seen a lot of people come out to just how much he impacted their lives. That just goes to show how great of a person he was, just in terms of so many people reaching out. And again, unfortunately, under the terrible circumstances it had to come through, but it certainly looked like he left a lot of impact on a whole bunch of different people's lives.
And if I could add one thing to what Andy said, just in terms of support, Cameron had a young daughter. I forget how old she is, but they started a GoFundMe for her college tuition, and just seeing how much support people have been able, to chip in, whether it's $5, $100, whatever, seeing that support just, for his daughter, who, it's so tough to go without a dad and lose your dad at this young age, but just see the support they've shown her as well is just incredible, and speaks to the community that we've seen throughout the UH athletics, and have had multiple athletes and coaches really talk about.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. When I saw the tweets coming out, what was it? Tuesday? I don't even know. But when I first saw it, and folks were shocked, saddened, in disbelief, and then when I was able to confirm it, it's tragedy. And I put it on my Facebook page, and alums reached out to me and asking me for details, or asking me, and I'm like, I don't know details or anything like that. I knew what I had heard. I wasn't going to publicize anything about what I was told. That was for the family to mention when they were ready to mention that. But, Cam impacts a lot of people. And I want to say this to everybody tuning in, to you guys on the show: give folks their flowers and appreciation while they're here. Appreciate them, tell them you love them while they're here. That's one, you never know, hearing that might just be what they need to get them through the day. So don't wait. So it is a tragedy. And Tamer, I think if she gets a chance to chime in these last few minutes before we close it out, she and Cam knew each other since they were like kids, middle school or younger. So it's been tough on her. I know it's tough on Dorian Branch. Dorian's one of my mentees. So I try to reach out to her and check on her, be sure she's okay. So this is a tragedy. And if you are going through things, you're going through things, you feel like you're alone, you're not alone. Reach out to somebody. Call, ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Don't be embarrassed. People still care about you, whoever you are. We're all dealing with stuff. We all think we're not going to get through the day. Get help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Seek that help. Willy, chime in if you can, just on what we've shared and what you know, and just give your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments that each of you has shared. I did not cover Cameron. Have been a follower of his father for quite some time. During his time at the Santa Monica Track Club, when he set the world record himself in the 100 meters. So I've always, from afar, been an admirer of Leroy Burrell, and it's sad. I mean, as you said, it's a shock. 26 years old, someone who seemingly, from what you see outwardly, has everything going from the world-class athlete, family, royal family of track and field, if you will, but you just never know. You never know what people are dealing with, what they are sharing with you, and it's why you have to be very, very careful on how we treat everyone. Because as you said, you never know that encouraging word, how far that will go with someone, and how that could be the very thing they need to keep going. And it's just we say it all the time. Oh, you just never know, but it's true. You never know. And so I'll take this time to encourage each one of you guys. We've known each other a short time, but I appreciate each and every one of you professionally, as colleagues, and personally, the times that we've gotten to grow and our relationship has grown. So it's tough. It's tough.
And I echo that. I want to. Well, we got to get you into Houston, man, so you could meet us, and we can just hang out, go to a game, or, whatever. Do that. Willy and I have plans in April to meet. Hopefully, we can meet before then. But yeah. Guys, I appreciate each and every one of you. I love each and every one of you. Thank you for taking time to be on the show. Share your information, your insight. I appreciate the people chiming in the comment section. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. These final few minutes here, get back to the Rockets. got some debate going back and forth here
I saw that.
about getting rid of Anthony Lamb. Is
Gordon.
not coming back. Yeah, he's not coming back this coming season. Eric Gordon, I think it's inevitable. He'll be gone. May not be until February. House, I think same thing. He'll be gone. May not be until February. The old heads, the veterans, you know, the guys that were here before Rafael Stone was GM, I think it's a matter of time before they're gone. Okay, just a matter of time. But the goal for the people tuning in, the comments who are watching on YouTube, what is y'all's expectation for the team this season? Because for me, I don't get James, Andy, and Will. For me, I just want the Rockets to be better than last year, which I think they will, as long as they're healthy. I don't have them making the playoffs this year, and I'm not even sure that'd be good for their long-term development if they made the playoffs this year, because they're not going to beat the 1 seed in the West this year. They're not. You know, and I'm not talking play-in. I'm not talking 10 seed, not. No, that's me. I don't think they're going to make the playoff this year. I think they're 2 years away. James, you first. What do you think about the Rockets' goal this year?
My goal, what I hope to see, is similar to yours. Just, you know, show improvement from last year. You're in the second year under Steven Silas, so, you know, more comfortable under his system, and then get those young guys valuable minutes, because even though, you know, you might not be fighting for a playoff push, every minute that they get to play is valuable. And then eventually, I agree with you. I don't think they're a playoff team. They'll probably be another lottery team, not as high as this year, but it also gives you an opportunity to add another piece in the upcoming draft and continue to build this youth, because the more and more they can build, I think they have a bright future if these guys pan out like they've shown they could.
Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they'll be better than they were last season, barring the amount of injuries that was honestly probably record-setting that they had this past season. I think Rafael Stone even mentioned it when they interviewed him during the game against the Pistons, how many different players that went through the organization this past year. But, you know, when you look at the Rockets, and a lot of factors, if they keep John Wall and Eric Gordon for at least half the year, Christian Wood stays healthy, doesn't have to miss a month or more that he did this past year, I don't think the play-in is out of the picture for this Rockets team. Obviously, they're really young, so there'll probably be stretches where they go on long losing streaks. I doubt it'll be another 20-game losing streak this season, but, you know, I'm interested to see how quickly, especially, honestly, specifically Jalen Green picks up the NBA game. He's shown that he can score a multitude of ways in the summer league. I'm interested to see how quickly he picks it up, being able to score like that against, you know, the true NBA players, the big-time professionals, and just, you know, getting that experience, how quickly he picks up the little, I wouldn't say, I'm thinking of a phrase that I can't truly, it's not coming to my head, but, you know, how quickly he can pick up the little tricks, you know, to get those scoring, make scoring easier and be able to be a consistent, you know, threat in the NBA. I think the play in a 10 seed, when you look at the teams that were there, San Antonio was in it, or in that stretch with Memphis, and New Orleans hasn't been able to put it together. Minnesota, the bottom top teams in the West, I feel like they could leapfrog them if they're healthy.
Okay, let's go to Tamer Knight. Thank you for taking time to join us. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about y'all?
We're doing okay. You were at the visitation? Yeah, just.
I didn't get to go. The weather is really bad right when I was leaving, so it was flooding, and I my car, so I just watched it on Facebook Live. But I did watch the first hour. And
I want to get your thoughts on the Rockets' playoff chances. But I think you told me, you had mentioned to me that you and Cam had known each other for like years. Is that right?
Yes. Went to Billy Baines Middle School, and that's in this middle school, the very first middle school back in 2006 that was built in Siena, Texas, and I met Cam in 6th grade, and I've had a class with him 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and always a very quiet and reserved guy. And then there was me, annoying. And I would just kind of get him to talk, and then we went over to, he went to Hightower and I went to Elkins. But then, you know, they built Ridgepoint, and again, it was a class with them at least once a year or something like that. And so I remember our math class senior year, and you know, he's always ran track and he's always been very quiet. So to just see him go, it's really sad. I'm not gonna lie. It's hard. And yeah, the circumstances of the entire thing is just heartbreaking.
I'm gonna talk to you after this. So I'm gonna call you. I'm not gonna text, I'm gonna call you. Okay. In your opinion, should the Rockets, should the playoffs be a goal for this year's Rockets?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, they have like Andy was saying, I was listening to you, Andy, and you said they have a very young team, and that's just that. But then we have to also look at, you know, Milwaukee. They also have a very young team, and you know what they've been able to build over there. It's possible with the Rockets. However, I don't think it'll happen this year. I think everybody's going to have to be able to mold and get to kind of know each other's playing styles before we can say they are a playoff team.
And Ja Morant, was it second year? They made the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
First year, what did they do? What did he do? You played well, rookie of the year. Did he make the playoffs?
Nope.
Okay, so I'm on that path.
Well, we have to get the summer league first, because some of the guys that are there right now may not be.
Oh yeah, we're not talking about summer league stuff. The Rockets' goal this year is to get better, in my opinion. Second year, Jalen Green, second year, playoffs. And then third year, keep getting better. Climb up that ladder. Because Memphis, I think people expect them to make the playoffs again. See if they were a fluke. The Rockets are not going to be projected to make the playoffs this year. Now, if they have breakout year, you know, all the rookies and all that stuff, okay, maybe they could be a 9 or 10 and fight for a play-in. I still don't think that's good. You know, get into 7-8, get swept in the first round does anything for your development long term. But year after, as James touched on, get another high lottery pick. You keep adding talent to the foundation, to the core. Rockets don't. These rookies are nice. All 4 of them, 19 years old. They're nice. It's a good foundation. Rockets are not great 9 through 12. 9 through 15. They got to add to it. This team is not on the caliber of Phoenix, Lakers, Clippers, Memphis, Dallas. You know, they're not. They can get there in 2 years. This is going to be a fun team to watch. Just enjoy this year. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the mistakes. Enjoy the highlights. It's going to be some oohs and ahs. Also going to be some ooh kind of stuff too. But that's my thoughts on. Hey, I could be wrong. I've been wrong many times in my 28 years doing this, but I don't believe they're going to make the playoffs this year. Of course, it's August 15th. If half the West gets hurt and to key players and they drop like flies, then Rockets have a chance to make the playoffs. Okay, but you know, okay. God, one man is dedicated on here. He said we're underestimating the Rockets. No, we're not. This is August 15th. I don't underestimate anybody. I want to see what they do in October, November, December. So, you know, none of that. But especially if they trade John Wall and Eric Gordon in December and just give the keys to the youngsters right off the bat and say, okay, y'all got it. They're not going to win a lot of games doing it that way. Will, before you shut out again, could the Rockets be on a Memphis Grizzlies path?
The 2-year plan, yes, I'll take that.
Yes.
But what I'll say, I've been listening the entire time, and the 10th seed last year in the West had 33 wins. So do you see a 33 win team in Houston this season? Legitimate, I'm asking. I'm not saying.
No. Yeah, that's a fair
yes or
question.
no.
That's a 16
you guys
win
covered
improvement.
the team much closer than I.
No.
That's
33 and 49 this year. I just, Andy, I think if you got the Rockets, if 33 wins in the West this year, because, it was 10 less games last year because of shortened season. So let's prorate that to 39. 39 and 43 for the 10th spot. Let's go 35, 47 for the 10th spot. If that is the 10th spot, then the West is really going backwards in terms of quality teams. Because there were times in recent years where the West 10 deep was 42 and 40, if not better, 45-37. So if 35 gets you a 10th spot, then the West is bad. No longer good. Thoughts on that, and then we're going to close it out. So everybody can go to NBA TV and watch the Summer Rockets versus the Summer Magic. Andy?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when you look at wins, I'm looking more at the teams that were ahead of them. And you look at Minnesota. Do you really feel like Minnesota will have a big leap? Honestly, I feel like San Antonio will have a drop off, which is hard to say because Greg Popovich always ends up coaching up that team. But I feel like they've lost a couple of more pieces. Well, they lost 3 key pieces with Patty Mills, DeMar DeRozan, and they lost Marcus Aldridge during the season. But that's that era. So now they're in a bit of a rebuild too. I could see them dropping out. And New Orleans lost. They're losing Lonzo Ball. They haven't been able to figure it out. The Clippers without Kawhi Leonard, they should make the playoffs. But if they have an injury to Paul George or to any of the, that roster tends to be injury prone too. I could see teams dropping to the point where the Rockets hover around that 10th spot and get into a play-in scenario. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, but I agree. The seeding of this team would be a play-in game, in my opinion. But even then, if you can get in that game just to have a playoff atmosphere type of game, I feel like that'll be much more better for the young guys, especially to get Jalen Green, Jae'Sean Tate, Christian Wood, that type of experience early and accelerate that process. Because I think with the Rockets plan, it is a 2-year plan. Once eventually, whether they trade John Wall or whatever they get back in return, by the time it's 2 years, they'll have much more cap room flexibility. And the idea would be that these young guys get to the point where they're attractive, where they can get a free agent and build from there. And that's where you go. And I feel like a play-in isn't too far-fetched, in my opinion.
James?
Considering the, how there was less games last year and a normal schedule upcoming, I think where I've leaned towards is the 30-ish win range for the Rockets, and I'm more like you, Kris, where if that's good enough to get in the play-in game in the West, that's a problem, and I don't see that happening. And I'm just a firm believer in, get the young guys experience, but then not making the playoffs is more beneficial just because you can add another piece through the draft. And so I see them around 30 wins this season.
Okay, and let me say this before I go to Tamer and get their thoughts. The starters for the Rockets tonight versus the Summer Magic: Josh Christopher, KJ Martin, Albie Sengun, Armani Brooks, and Tremont Waters. 2 of those guys practiced yesterday for the first time this summer. So good old Summer League is here. Tune in to NBA TV to watch the Summer Rockets versus the Summer Magic. Tamer, Rockets playing 10 seed, 9 seed, or just not make it at all and just go get a high a lottery pick as possible for next season?
I think I'll go with the second option. I think that they just might. I mean, I think they have potential, maybe depending on who is there once the season starts. Do I think they'll get 39 wins? No. I mean, considering they'll have more games than last season, then maybe it's possible, it's doable. But I agree that they're just on a 2-year plan like the Spurs, and they're just going to have to be okay with not having a record-winning season, or, doing the better than some of the teams that we saw last season. But they're just going to have to accept that, and that's just what it's going to be. And they may go really low, and they might be aiming for a higher seed in the draft.
I can see the Spurs falling off. I can see that. Yes. But everybody else, Minnesota will be better as long as they're healthy. D'Angelo Russell and Cat and Anthony Edwards, that trio should be better than Rockets trio, because this Rocket trio hasn't done it yet. So, go ahead. I was trying to close it out for Will, but okay, Andy, you wrap it up, and then we're just going to wrap it up. Everybody, tell folks how they can find you on the internet, and then we'll close it out. Go ahead, Andy.
Wrap it up with telling people where to find me, or get one more point?
Both. The point and then wrap it up.
Cool. Look at these Oklahoma City Thunder. Honestly, I feel like they could easily end up with the worst record in the West. They'll take over for the Rockets there. Timberwolves,
Fair.
Kings, Pelicans, Spurs. Those were teams 14th through 10th in the West. I mean, if everyone's healthy, could you really say that any one of those teams are clear-cut better than the Rockets?
Yeah.
Really? Which team?
Yeah. Well, I know that they should be better based on who they have and development. The Kings should be better.
Yeah.
Because at some point they can't suck forever. They're coming real close though. I mean, they really are. They got it on lock, just being awful for 16, 17, 20 years. OKC will be bad. That's Sam Presti. Okay, they can be the floor for the conference. Fine. Pelicans, they put Willie Green, new head coach, in a tough spot. Okay, but they still have Zion. They still have pieces. They got to prove it. The Kings, they can score. Their problem is they don't have enough guys who want to play defense. I think they are beginning to change that mentality. So I'm going to pick them ahead of the Rockets. Utah is better. The Spurs, like I said, the Spurs are going to fall back, but it doesn't mean they're going to be fall worse than 10th. This is a good debate. We can continue this, especially come September and October when we get closer.
There are also a couple of wild cards with Portland. It looks like they're going to stand packed this season. I mean,
I don't know for the whole season. I think at some point Dame says he wants out. They'll try to make it a big deal for everybody involved. But Andy, what you're doing is you're just bringing teams back to the Rockets level. Okay, you're not saying the Rockets are going to win 38, 39, 40 games. You're saying other teams are going to come back down to the Rockets, and Rockets are going to get the 10th spot by default. That's what you're saying.
Hey, I said the debate. Hey, 10th spot is 10th spot. I think it's more curious just in terms of where the landscape is. Like we mentioned, it's August, so there's still a lot of variables that can play into whatever factors end up once the season starts. I mean, the Rockets could end up trading John Wall tomorrow and get, role players and interesting parts, draft picks, whatever. So there's still a lot to debate, but currently constructed, I'm just saying, if the Rockets, I feel like the ceiling could be a playing game.
Okay, ceiling is a playing game. Okay, that's better than some of these folks on here. One of them comment had him Rockets as a 7 seed. No, I just don't see that. I don't see that happening at all. But hey, this is fun. We got a lot of comments from folks today, so keep it coming. We're going to continue doing this for the rest of the year going forward. So start with Tamer. How can folks find you on social media?
Oh, we have breaking news right now. Sorry, Tamer, I didn't mean to cut you off. But the Los Angeles Clippers just traded Patrick Beverley, Rajon Rondo, and Daniel Oturo
I see that,
to the Grizzlies for Eric Bledsoe.
Wow.
Wow. I don't know more details about that, but okay, based off this trade, Clippers, be bullish on the Clippers. I see them falling. That's an interesting trade.
Wow. Well, no. I mean, Eric Bledsoe. Will, come on. Will, come on. Come on. Give me thoughts on Eric Bledsoe now. Come on.
Yeah, that's interesting. He's solid. I mean, he'll fit with him and Reggie Jackson. So is he going to be the backup and Reggie starts, or is they going to keep Reggie as the sixth man, or how's that going to work?
That's a great question, because Reggie had a great playoffs, no doubt, had a great playoffs, but Reggie is not as good as he thinks he is. Okay, so if he gets more minutes, I think more warts will show the more he plays. But that is an interesting trade for the Clippers. And Pat Bev, Rondo going to the Grizz. Both of them won't be there, won't stay in Memphis. So I'm kind of curious to see whether they'll be rerouted. But hey, as Summer League winds down, we got stuff to talk about for next week's show. So this is a great thing. We didn't forget about the Clippers. The Clippers just aren't going to fall down to 10. That's all. The Clippers could still be an 8 seed, 7-8 seed. They're not going to fall down to 10.
Unless if Paul George gets injured, Chris.
Okay, well, Andy, we're going to go that far. Then, of course, then what if Chris Paul gets hurt? What if LeBron gets hurt? AD gets hurt? What if Book gets hurt? What if Mitchell gets hurt? Rudy Gobert gets hurt? On and on and on. We can do okay. I'll do it like this. What if Jalen Green gets hurt? What if Christian Wood gets hurt? What if the Rockets have a second straight year of just injuries that you've never seen before?
Then the Rockets are right back for the number one seed contention, the number one pick contention.
So yeah, this is fun. This is good. I guess nobody's watching the game. That why they're still commenting on the show, which is good. But yes, Tamer, how can folks find you on the internet, social media?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at TKnight Sports. That's TKNIGHT Sports on Twitter and Instagram. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Tamer Knight, easy peasy on YouTube. And thank you for having me as always. And I'm so upset I missed 90% of the conversation, or debate, I should say.
That's you, right, Tamer? Isn't that you right there on Twitter?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right, Will. One more time. How can folks find you on social media?
They follow me on Will Gibson 7, Twitter and Instagram, and the Will Knows Facebook page, the Will Knows podcast.
James, how can folks find you?
Yeah, Twitter at JDM2186, and then all my work is on thedailycougar.com.
Andy?
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter at Yanez_5. Be sure to check out our podcast, Pod Slamma Jamma, where we're hoping we have a big guest for our next episode. I don't want to give too much away because we haven't secured a time yet, but we might have a potential guest for this week. So be on the lookout for Pod Slamma Jamma. And of course, my work at Community Impact. We finally had our first monthly, because I'm with the Pearland side, so our first monthly edition where I have my fingerprints all over it. That came out last Friday. So follow me on Twitter. I have a link to my Muckrack account that shows everything that I write. So please check that out. It was pretty cool and pretty awesome to finally have I guess an official newspaper page right in front of you where I just I don't know. It's amazing. It's amazing how progress I've made since June. So check that out.
Congratulations, man, and keep pushing forward. I am Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. Shout out to everybody commenting. Much appreciated. Y'all come back. I'm not sure when our next one's going to be. Maybe next Sunday. We kind of like Sundays for flexibility right now, especially during off basketball season. But once football season starts, that may change a little bit. Time might change. But we'll see. Next Sunday, probably, this may be 7 o'clock Central Time. Right, Will? That's what we're aiming for, I think. August 22nd at 7 p.m. Central. If you haven't checked out my interview with Stephen Johnson from the Daily Memphian,
yes, sir.
It's on Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel. He talks about Jalen Duren signing with Memphis, or committing to Memphis, one of the top players from the class of 22 who reclassified for 21, who committed to Memphis, and also possibility of Imani Bates doing the same thing and committing to Memphis. So that interview's on the YouTube channel. After the Summer Magic game, I should have the post-game comments from Coach Weaver and one or two players on the channel as well. Hopefully within an hour and a half after the game concludes. Got a few other things. Reaching out to some other colleagues for interviews as well. On them up hopefully this week. Trying to continue my tour of the beat writers in the American Athletic Conference. Having something in the works, working on something with Justin Gorham. We'll see how it works. Not sure it'll be part of this show or interviews that I'll add to this show. We're trying to get Justin to get his schedule, once he finalizes his schedule, to be part of this on a semi-regular basis and get his, follow him throughout this season overseas in Germany. Just working on that as well. So big things lined up. I may finally begin my one-on-ones YouTube style, not just audio style on the podcast platforms. Going to go video, so giving you, you might get tired of seeing my face on my channel because if I go 3-4 times a week, giving my one-on-ones, if you heard them, I don't hold back. You know, just like I do on this show, I don't hold back. I give you my thoughts and give you some insight, kind of similar to what Bobby Marks does on Instagram, but it'll be on YouTube with a local flair, focusing more on the local teams, the Cougs, Rockets, Rice Owls, and then some national NBA, WNBA, NCAA news as well. Everybody, thank you very much for participating. Y'all be safe. We'll keep in touch. Kudos to everybody who participated in the comments. Love to y'all. Love to my people, Willie, Tamer, James, Andy, Tamer. I'm getting ready to call you, so get ready. Everybody take care. See you next week. Thank you for tuning in to Folks Talking Sports.